After checking out Vaati's videos on Elden Ring, I wanted to learn more about the other Souls games. So today we're going to be checking out Bloodborne, which is a game that I've heard only very good things about. I know that everybody laments the fact that we will never receive a PC port, and I know a little bit about the story, but here on the channel, we like to do deep dives into the lore. So I thought today would be the perfect day to learn about it. But of course, before we begin, as always, make sure to click the link at the very top of the description in order to go and support the original video by Vaati. Leave a like, subscribe to Vaati. Make sure to watch the original video first before coming back to watch this reaction, because I will be doing a lot of pausing and commentating on certain story points that we get here. And it may not be the best viewing experience on your first watch. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Oh, and also, if you guys have any videos to recommend when it comes to getting into the Dark Souls series specifically, I wasn't really able to find anything by just doing a simple search. So if you have any recommendations, let me know down in the comments and I'll take a look at them later, because I do want to get into Dark Souls as well as Sekiro too.
The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown.
Okay. Well, this I do know. Yep. There it is. That Bloodborne is very Lovecraftian horror. There is a cosmic being that we're kind of unknowingly working for, I think. Not sure, but I do know that we fight him at the end of the game. And I think at some point we eat a baby. If I recall correctly, all of this we learned from Maxor's video, which, kind of rapid fired all this information, but I did retain some of it.
H.P. Lovecraft.
Our eyes are yet to open. Fear the old blood.
These were the words spoken between Master Willem and Lawrence, from the cautious teacher to the ambitious student. Fear what you do not understand. Fear the old blood. And so our story begins, as you might have guessed, with blood. Ancient blood. Deep below the city of Yharnam lies the ancient underground labyrinth of Tumeru. You know it as the Chalice Dungeons. The old labyrinth was...
the Chalice Dungeons. Weren't the Chalice Dungeons, procedurally generated dungeons I could do near endgame? Extremely unbalanced, apparently. And I think there was even a system where you could make dungeons for other players to play in. The Bloodborne community is probably still trying to keep that alive.
Carved out by the Tumerians, superhuman beings that are said to have discovered a sinister truth. The Hunters had another name for the labyrinth. They called it the Tomb of the Gods. For below, they found traces of godlike beings named the Great Ones. The Great Ones could function on transcendental planes of thought, meaning they had elevated their consciousness beyond the physical realm. The benefits of operating on this plane are unclear. Perhaps it was in the name of immortality, or perhaps power, as even beyond, the Great Ones could interfere with beings and events in the waking world. Whatever the case, it is clear that some sort of ascension took place, as there are numerous references to some Great Ones being left behind. Of all the strange life forms that reside in the nooks and crannies of the old labyrinth, the slugs are clear signs of the left-behind Great Ones. One such Great One appears to be abandoned Ebritus, a left-behind being who apparently did not ascend with her brethren. One day, Ebritus would be discovered by the humans above, in a crusade that begins with a character named Willem. Master Willem presided over a prestigious place of learning, Byrgenwerth. Situated by a tranquil lake and secluded within a gigantic forest, Byrgenwerth housed the minds that would change the world.
Okay. Some quick thoughts here. I don't really have too much to comment on yet in regards to the story and how all this is going to connect, because obviously I'm kind of working off of basically no knowledge here. But what I did notice is the connections between this and certain ideas that were taken and remixed in Elden Ring. And if I go back to learn about the Dark Souls lore, there will also likely be certain things there that will connect back to here. I'm kind of going through this backwards, but I suppose it offers a pretty unique perspective on how From Software has developed their games. Now Miyazaki's vision has kind of shifted and evolved, I suppose is a better word there.
In fact, everything sacred in Yharnam came to be traced back to Byrgenwerth, including the most influential characters within our story. Bloodborne's lore is very character-driven, and there are 5 who I'm going to help you become familiar with. There was Master Willem, Runesmith Carol, Lawrence, Mikolash, and Gurman. Mikolash?
That name made me get PTSD to Mikola. But also, I think I remember Mikolash. I think he's the guy who runs away during his boss fight, and then he turns around and one-shots you whenever he gets cornered. Is that the same Mikolash? If I remember correctly, the map for Bloodborne is also pretty intricate, but it's not technically open world. So with the game being much more character-driven, well, I don't really know because I still have yet to play Elden Ring. Still hasn't won any of the polls that we've done on the channel. But I wonder if people would consider the story for Bloodborne to be better in a general sense, or maybe just more tightly woven, more intricate, more compelling. It's kind of hard to say because I feel like when it comes to open world games, kind of like the situation with Breath of the Wild, the story ends up taking more of a backseat to the gameplay. Personally, I really enjoy more story-driven games, which is why my favorite Zelda is probably going to be Twilight Princess, and this is going to be the hill that I'm going to die on. But I wonder if there's a similar feeling between those two Zelda games and between Elden Ring and Bloodborne. Because Elden Ring has certainly become, like, some people's most favorite game of all time, but I have heard many voices saying that Bloodborne is their favorite Souls game.
Introduce them to you in the order that they become relevant in the story. As I said, Master Willem was the head of the school at Byrgenwerth. The man was obsessed with the truth and believed in pushing the limits of humanity. In almost every dialogue and description, Willem is referred to as Master or Provost, clearly deserving of a great deal of respect. Many would eventually diverge from his tutorage, but few can say that they didn't owe everything to his research, for while Willem presided over Byrgenwerth, the scholars there discovered terrific things in the tombs below the city of Yharnam.
Once, a group of young Byrgenwerth scholars discovered a holy medium deep within the tomb. This led to the founding of the Healing Church and the establishment of blood healing.
It's hard to be sure exactly what was found, but we do know it was related to the Great Ones. On the ground floor of Byrgenwerth College, we find the Pearl Slugs, remnants of the Great Ones, and at the very top of the college, we find the empty Phantasm Shell, an empty invertebrate shell that is said to be the familiar of a Great One. After this discovery, whatever it was that showed them that the Great Ones existed, the Byrgenwerth scholars launched an inquiry into the Great Ones and the Old Blood. For from this point onwards, there is an explosion of lore and history and references to what the scholars found in the tombs below Yharnam. Many of these references come from runesmith Carol, the second character of our story. Carol transcribed the inhuman utterings of the Great Ones into what we now call Carol runes. In true Lovecraftian fashion, it is really likely that it's impossible for humans to comprehend the speech of the Great Ones.
Yeah.
But Carol apparently had a knack, a talent for creating a visual representation of the Great One's words.
Intriguing.
The hunter who receives this workshop tool can etch Carol runes into their mind to attain their wondrous strength.
Oh, I see. And these are like modifiers for your character. I find this mix between the lore and the gameplay in these Souls games developed by FromSoft to just be pretty neat. Also, as a side note, my mind is kind of thinking that this hunter Carol is probably not doing very well. I can't imagine somebody who's constantly deciphering the whisperings of the Lovecraftian horrors is going to be in the best state of mind, you know?
Provost Willem would have been proud of Carol's runes, as they do not rely upon blood in any measure. This statement is curious. It tells us three things. First, Provost Willem and Carol were close, as Willem would have been proud of him. And second, Willem didn't have a chance to be proud, so it's possible that the two lost contact. And thirdly, and most importantly, Willem would have been proud because the runes did not rely on blood. In other words, Willem did not approve the use of the Old Blood, the blood found in the Tomb of the Gods. The Metamorphosis rune states, the discovery of blood made their dream of evolution a reality. Metamorphosis and the excesses and deviation that followed was only the beginning. Willem believed in a different path. He believed in attaining more insight, for humanity's eyes had yet to open. The Eye rune states that Master Willem looked to beings from higher planes for guidance, and sought to line his brain with eyes in order to elevate his thoughts.
Oh my god. That is such a horrific image if you think of it literally. I don't think this can be good for humanity though. I don't think we have a conclusive reason for why we sought knowledge from the old ones. It's probably the usual human stuff of like knowledge, power, immortality. But I can't imagine the old ones having the human's best interest in mind. Considering the current state of things in Bloodborne, where you walk around and there's just a ton of enemies everywhere trying to kill you, I would say things have gone pretty bad. But I wonder if it was a direct result of the old ones interfering, or if it was because mankind sought out the old ones in the first place and brought this upon ourselves by using their blood and stuff like that.
And with these descriptions, you should have some idea of the scale of ambition of these characters. With the discovery of beings greater than them came a desire to ascend into godhood, to push humanity into its next stage of evolution. The only question was, how? Blood or insight? And this was a question that split the ranks of the Byrgenwerth scholars. It's how we arrived at the cutscene we started at earlier, with Master Willem and Lawrence parting ways.
Master Willem, I've come to bid you farewell.
Oh, I know. You think now to betray me.
From this cutscene, we can infer that Lawrence was a high-ranking student of Master Willem, because firstly, Lawrence refers to Willem as Master, and secondly, Willem clearly regards Lawrence highly enough to call this departure a betrayal.
No, but you will never listen.
Lawrence disagrees. He does not see it as betrayal, and here we come to the heart of what their disagreement is about. Essentially, it boils down to the difference between the two resources in the game. Willem believes man requires insight and knowledge to ascend. Lawrence believes in the power of blood. Lawrence attempts to reassure Willem, telling him he will always fear.
Wait. I just realized, Lawrence. Isn't there a boss in the DLC for Bloodborne that's named Lawrence? That stuck out to me like a sore thumb because it was like a pretty mundane name. Or was it Ludwig? I might be mixing things up. We'll see later on in the video, probably.
The old blood, but that this fear will not stop him using it.
I tell you, I will not forget our adage.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes are yet to open.
Fear the old blood. I must take my leave.
Lawrence leaves the Byrgenwerth scholars, presumably with a small group of rebels, and goes on to found the Healing Church. Willem remains at Byrgenwerth and attempts to elevate his thoughts to a higher plane. He will return to our story at a later time, so while I tell you of what Lawrence went on to do, imagine Willem here in Byrgenwerth, sitting in his rocking chair over the lake, musing on how to acquire insight and elevate his thoughts to a higher plane. Everything Lawrence would come to achieve was based on the knowledge he had come by in Byrgenwerth. In retrospect, we clearly see why Willem saw Lawrence's departure as a betrayal. Perhaps Willem himself even planted these ideas in Lawrence's mind. A note in the lecture hall reads, "Master Willem was right. Evolution without courage will be the ruin of our race." Lawrence had courage, but it is likely that his courage bordered on arrogance. The Byrgenwerth student uniform states, "The Healing Church has its roots in Byrgenwerth and naturally borrows heavily from its uniform design. The focus not on knowledge or thought, but on pure pretension would surely bring Master Willem to despair, if only he knew."
I mean, it's the classic story of like the wise old sensei who says, "Caution, don't seek out this ruinous power." And then we have the young upstart student who believes that the sensei is simply just too scared to use this newfound power. We must have courage in order to use it, and then it turns us into horrific beasts, probably. And maybe he regrets his decision later on, but there isn't really anything that he can do about it anymore. We did see earlier that we kinda ended up killing Willem in order to obtain the rune, the eye rune. So I don't think Willem achieved godhood by simply sitting there and thinking. or maybe he did, and maybe that's not his actual body. I don't know. He kind of just disappeared and poofed out of existence. But I also don't think Lawrence achieved anything great either.
So Lawrence threw caution to the wind and put his faith in the old blood. Think on human history. Imagine if, in any era, a church was founded that had access to a substance that could cure any illness. Imagine if this church gave it freely to a city, how powerful that city would become, and how powerful the church would become within it. This is exactly what happened in Yharnam.
I mean, it sounds too good to be true, and it likely is. There's gotta be some sort of side effect to this, right?
People came far and wide to be treated with the miraculous blood of the gods, and the people of Yharnam put their faith in the healing church. In fact, what happened in Yharnam is eerily similar to what happened in the tombs deep below, where the blood was originally found. And as you know, many chalice dungeons, especially those of Loran, are now overrun by horrific beasts. The lower Loran chalice states, there are trace remains of medical procedures in parts of ailing Loran. Whether these were attempts to control the scourge of the beast or the cause of the outbreak is unknown. The ailing Loran chalice states, the tragedy that struck this ailing land of Loran is said to have its root in the scourge of the beast. Some have made the dreaded extrapolation that Yharnam may be next. Yharnam was next. Through overuse of the healing blood, the city would eventually succumb to the scourge of the beast. Until then, though, Lawrence and the healing church managed to grow in power.
The scourge of the beast. So eventually, do people just turn into werewolves or something similar to that because they took in the blood of the old ones? Or too much of it? I wonder if there's a certain threshold, and I wonder if that might be like a game mechanic for you too. Like maybe you as the hunter can't take too many of these, or else you kind of just die or game over or turn into a beast or whatever.
With the miraculous healing properties of their special, yet infected, blood. Yharnam grows to become a city of worship and fear. As you explore throughout the city, you see the influence of the church everywhere. With Yharnam's resources, Lawrence clearly had the power to grow the church beyond what would have been possible at Byrgenwerth. All the while, he continued exploring the labyrinth below Yharnam. The Tomb Prospector set reads, attire of the Tomb Prospectors who explore the old labyrinth on behalf of the Healing Church. The Healing Church traces its roots to Byrgenwerth and is therefore aware of the ruins' true importance. These ruins contain much more than hunter trinkets. Indeed, they hide the very secrets of the old Great Ones, sought after by those with the insight to imagine greatness. On top of this, Lawrence split the church into multiple branches, each with a different purpose. There was the choir, the school of Mensis, and the workshop. We'll get to these branches as they become appropriate, but the main purpose of the church, at least to the people of Yharnam, was the administration of blood healing. Within the Grand Cathedral itself lies a note that says, heir to the ritual of blood, purveyor of ministration, place your hand upon the altar's sacred covering and inscribe Master Lawrence's adage upon your flesh. Blood ministers would have been those who administered the blood healing. How else would the people of Yharnam be so obsessed with blood? In Yharnam, they produced more blood than alcohol, as the former is more intoxicating. However, the ministration of blood was likely a means to an end, for the healing church still intended to commune with the Great Ones, in hopes of ascending humanity to a higher plane. This task was given to the choir, a group who were a part of the healing church. Members of the choir are both the highest-ranking clerics of the healing church and scholars who continued the work that began at Byrgenwerth.
Oh, well. As I assumed, members of the choir aren't exactly going to be singing in the church, in this instance. Also, earlier, I don't recall which sect of the church it was, but they had like these round cages around their head. If I recall correctly, I think Mikolash has one of those as well, so does that mean that he was a member of that? Or maybe he was like the head honcho of said sect? Not really sure what the purpose of that would be, but we'll probably learn later. The cage, I mean.
The eye covering indicates their debt to the teachings of Master Willem, even though their paths diverged. The choir, garbed in black and white, with the familiar eye covering, occupied the upper cathedral ward. It seems to have been their job to research and make contact with the Great Ones. The Great Is Chalice became the cornerstone of the choir, the elite delegation of the Healing Church. It was also the first great chalice brought back to the surface since the time of Byrgenwerth and allowed the choir to have audience with Abritus.
And we met Abritus earlier, who was the Great One that apparently didn't ascend after whatever great event happened in the past.
Was the left-behind Great One, who came to reside below the Grand Cathedral. We are told that the Grand Cathedral is the birthplace of the Healing Church's special blood, and
So does that mean that all the special blood that the church has given out to everybody is directly from Abritus and they're just harvesting her?
if the church were indeed using the blood of the Great Ones, then who's to say it wasn't Abritus's blood? The Augur of Abritus is one of the secret rites of the choir, used by the high-ranking members of the Healing Church. Use phantasms, the invertebrates known to be augurs of the Great Ones, to partially summon abandoned Abritus, one of the few rites that allow one to directly utilize the power of the Great Ones and evidence that the choir had approached the Eldritch truth. The Augur of Abritus is an arcane method of fighting that was actually shared.
Wait a minute.
Arcane method.
I see. That's a very familiar attack animation from Elden Ring. Gosh darn it. I keep on forgetting the name for it, but it's the primordial ooze of life that existed before the Golden Order. I think a lot of the knights that use that power also have this particular ability, or a very similar looking one.
Method of fighting that was actually shared with the second subsection of the Healing Church, the School of Mensis. The upper echelons of the Healing Church
here's
are formed
Mikolash.
by the School of Mensis, based in the Unseen Village. This brings us to our next important character, Mikolash, who was likely the head of the School of Mensis. The School
he's
of
the head.
Mensis
Yeah, makes
was,
sense.
as the name implies, a place of learning, research, and experimentation for the Healing Church. Their student set reads, "The Healing Church has its roots in Bergenworth, and
The freaking one-hit kill.
naturally borrows heavily from its uniform design. The school was based below Yharnam, in a place called Yahar'gul, the Unseen Village. Clearly, the work of Mensis was intended to be kept a secret from the people of Yharnam. In fact, as time went on, the school increasingly seems to have been working alone, even separately from the Healing Church itself. The Yahar'gul attire tells us, "The hunters of Yahar'gul answer to the village's founders, the School of Mensis. Hunters in name only, these kidnappers blend into the night wearing this attire."
Kidnappers.
These were not true hunters. That title was saved for the third subsection of the Healing Church, the Hunters of the Workshop. These
So does that mean we're also a part of this section of the church? And we were kind of like tasked to do something about the current situation? I don't know how we fix this exactly, but I guess we can try.
capable warriors of the church appeared as the scourge of the beast began to show in Yharnam. The workshop hunters served under Gurman, the first hunter, who you're all familiar with.
Oh. Yeah, that's right. I remember a joke from Maxer's Elden Ring video. Something about feeling sorry that you're German or something because it's like his least favorite disability. So it's pronounced German. Okay. But it's probably spelled exactly like German. Or maybe something close to it.
The hunter attire reads, one of the standard articles of hunter attire fashioned at the workshop, a fine piece of hunter attire that provides stable defense to anyone facing Yharnam's beastly threat, allows one to stalk beasts unannounced by cover of night. It's possible the unannounced part of that sentence is to do with killing beasts without them noticing you, but it could also be because the workshop was a secret institution. The original workshop is located in a very hard to find part of Cathedral Ward, and think about it, you don't want the townsfolk believing that the blood is turning them into beasts. When that information is floating around, you want to avoid panic at all costs. So the hunters hunted beasts under the cover of night, but the hunters and the beastly scourge couldn't stay a secret forever.
I mean, it's kind of difficult when everybody's turning. Having these hunters go out to try to keep things hush-hush is only going to work for a certain amount of time.
What would come to be called Old Yharnam, a new disease appeared. It was called Ashen Blood. I call it a disease, but the small medicinal tablets used to treat it actually counteract poison. A tablet used to treat Ashen Blood, the baffling sickness that ravaged Old Yharnam long ago. These tablets only provide short-term relief. The Ashen Blood ailment eventually triggered the spread of the beastly scourge. Think about that. We know that the old blood heals every illness. We know that the old blood causes the beastly scourge, and we now know that the Ashen Blood caused the beastly scourge to spread. In short, it seems like people were infected with the Ashen Blood, and the medicine that they had only provided short-term relief, and they were forced to imbibe the old blood instead. It's even possible that the healing church used this ashen blood to gain power, swooping in with this miracle cure and liberating the people from the ashen blood disease. Since ashen blood seemed poisonous in nature, perhaps the church even poisoned the populace just for that excuse to use the old blood, because they—
Oh God, Lawrence, what have you done? Why have you done this? I wonder if in Bloodborne there's any mention of like the rest of the world or the world at large, or whether we only kind of keep the story just contained in this one city, this one town. Well, no, you can't even call it a town. It's just this massive. Is this like a worldwide thing? Or is this centralized to here because of the influence of the church? Considering that we have literal eldritch horrors, I would assume it's a worldwide thing, if not an entirely dimensional thing. But one can hope that there's somewhere out there where people get to chill and do what they want to do, not have to worry about getting eaten by beasts or turning into one. Actually, do like anti-vaxxers use this game as an example? I wonder. Because, I mean, it's basically the same thing. Like, here, take this. You won't have any diseases anymore. Uh-oh, turn into stinky werewolf. That's why we should have never trusted the church.
that excuse to get the populace to believe in you, that would have been so powerful. But whatever the case, the beastly scourge was triggered overwhelmingly in Old Yharnam. We know that much.
No
to
kidding.
the point where they actually had to burn it down and cordon off Old Yharnam from the rest of the city. The red moon hangs low, and beasts rule the streets. Are we left no other choice than to burn it all to cinders? With this,
We might need some help from the Frenzied Flame here. Do a full reset. Well, I can't really even call it a reset. It's kind of just an end to everything.
hunt became known to all. Perhaps the church feared an uprising from the people of Yharnam, for a note in central Yharnam reads, "When the hunt began, the healing church left us, blocking the great bridge to Cathedral Ward as Old Yharnam burned to the ground that moonlit night." As a result, Gurman's workshop was sealed and closed. With the scourge of the beast known to all, perhaps there was no need for secrecy anymore. The Saw Hunter badge comes to read, "Badge crafted long ago at the workshop, attests to one's prowess as a hunter of beasts. The workshop is gone, and no group recognizes this meaningless badge." At this point, the church retreats. They block themselves off in Upper Cathedral Ward and come up with a new strategy for dealing with the scourge of the beasts that is spreading throughout Yharnam. Eventually, the workshop hunters would disband, and the church founded the Church Hunter Workshop in its place. Ludwig was the chief hunter of the healing church.
Okay, no. It was Ludwig, and we do fight Ludwig in the DLC. That I'm certain of. The only reason I know of that is because of the banger boss music. I do listen to that on my off time. I wouldn't really call it a relaxing tune to listen to while I'm working, but I really enjoy it. Game OSTs fascinate me. Although I'm not musically inclined, so I can't really talk much about them. All I can really do is say, hey, that's pretty cool.
Which consisted of hunters garbed in black and white. The black church hunter attire reads, "Most healing church hunters are elementary doctors who understand the importance of early prevention of the scourge."
Early prevention. Takes out a claymore. Hey, if it works, don't fix it.
Achieved by disposing of victims, even potential victims, before signs of sickness manifest themselves.
Jeez, potential victims. It's like in 40k, if chaos happens to touch a planet, let's say, they don't really have the resources to go around interrogating or observing every single person, so I feel like there have been cases before where they've just wiped out entire cities or even planets because of suspicion of chaos. I suspect, given the current situation, that we're also running on the same rules. And I mean, fair is fair. Like, anybody who's taken the blood is probably going to turn at some point. Safer bet to dispose of them when they're weak.
Their black attire is synonymous with fear and that peculiar Yharnam madness. The black church hunter's job was clear. Remove any sign of the scourge of the beast, even if it hasn't manifested itself yet. The fear that it inspired in the citizens shows. Most in Upper Cathedral Ward are deathly afraid of the church.
Yeah.
The white church hunters' jobs were a bit different. These doctors are superiors to the black preventative hunters and specialists in experimentally backed blood ministration and the scourge of the beast. They believe that medicine is not a means of treatment, but rather a method of research, and that some knowledge can only be attained by exposing oneself to sickness. Their experimentation might explain the monstrously large church giants who would have been particularly useful in the fight against the beasts. Ludwig's greatsword exhibits several departures from the workshop's design, suggesting that the church anticipated much larger, inhuman beasts. On top of this, Ludwig took a much more overt approach to beast hunting. Nightly, he would embark upon central Yharnam, across the Great Bridge, to fight back against the beasts. But he was not alone. The population of central Yharnam joined the hunt as well, swelling the ranks of the hunters. Ludwig, the first hunter of the Healing Church, once recruited Yharnamites to serve as hunters. This hunter's attire was made for new recruits and has excellent straightforward defense.
I mean, I feel like that makes a ton of sense. Like, hey, there's this problem going on. We need all hands on deck. And if we don't get this done, then we're all gonna die, pretty much. I'm just waiting to see how this backfires, as it usually does in FromSoft games.
But not nearly enough to allow an ordinary man to stand any real chance against the beasts. It sounds like a very clever move.
They're basically chaff units.
The populace blaming the church, and likely formed more of a us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in Byrgenwerth, Master Willem had an epiphany. We are thinking on the basest of planes. What we need are more eyes. Willem took this very literally. The remaining students of Byrgenwerth appear to have been transformed into multi-eyed, fly-like creatures, and more importantly...
Oh my god! Oh no! Jeez, this is really cool though, because yeah, as I said earlier, we're seeing ideas that have been just remixed in Elden Ring. I forgot what they were called specifically, but there are enemies in Elden Ring that look almost exactly like this too, and they are horrifying. This has to do with the Frenzied Flame, if I recall correctly. I mean, the Frenzied Flame also had the whole thing with the eyes as well, so... lots of parallels here.
Willem himself found an umbilical cord of a Great One, which was a very significant and powerful artifact.
Oh wait, do we eat the umbilical cord? I think that was something that happened in Maxor's video. Probably depends on what ending you're going for.
Provost Willem sought the cord in order to elevate his being and thoughts to those of a Great One by lining his brain with eyes, the only choice he knew if man were ever to match their greatness. Used to gain insight, and, so they say, eyes on the inside, although no one remembers what that truly entails. It's difficult to know exactly how Willem came across or created an umbilical cord, so we'll have to go into that in another video. Just know that he has one for now. When we encounter Willem, he directs us to the Great Lake. The power of great bodies of water is actually referenced in a few runes. Great volumes of water serve as a bulwark guarding sleep, and an augur of the eldritch truth. Overcome this hindrance and seek what is yours.
Intriguing.
The lake and what lies within it hides the truth. Rom, the Byrgenwerth spider, lies within, and there's a lot we don't know about her, but I'll tell you what we do know. The Byrgenwerth spider hides all manner of rituals and keeps our lost master from us, a terrible shame. The spider is certain to reveal nothing, for true enlightenment need not be shared. I believe this is what the vacuous part of Rom's name refers to. This creature is somehow hiding the true nature of the world, and when you defeat it, you don't need insight to see the world for what it truly is. The night moves forward, the blood moon descends, and after killing Rom, we are finally granted access to what...
Oh, okay. Hiding the truth of the world, as in, as long as it exists, nobody can see reality for what it is. Although, when eldritch beings come into play, it brings into question exactly what reality is in the first place. It's really just what you perceive, but if what you perceive isn't true, then where do we end up?
Remains of Yahar'gul, home of Mikolash and his school of Mensis. The School of Mensis appears to have grown apart from the Healing Church and the choir. There is little information on Mikolash and his school, but we can prove that there was a split. Firstly, Mikolash uses the Augur of Abritus, a secret rite of the choir shared among the high-ranking members of the Healing Church. This suggests he was trusted with this information and was once a sane member of the church. To prove that there was a split between the Healing Church's choir and the school, we note clear signs of distrust and fighting between the groups. Imprisoned inside Yahar'gul is the corpse of a member of the choir. And inside the Nightmare of Mensis, we find who the official guide calls Edgar, choir intelligence. Clearly, the choir was suspicious of what was going on in Yahar'gul with the School of Mensis, and based on what we find there in Yahar'gul, it seems the choir had good reason to be. The School of Mensis were attempting to commune with the Great Ones, and they succeeded. As Willem did, they found an umbilical cord. We find 4 cords in the game that allow contact with the Great.
Why are there so many umbilical cords around here? Is the ultimate goal to bring something to life? And that's kind of the connection there? Or does this tie back into when we eat the baby? Probably. There seems to be a pretty heavy theme towards that.
Great Ones, and Mikolash had one. This cord granted Mensis audience with Murgo, but resulted in the stillbirth of their brains.
Murgo.
As we know, most Great Ones reside in the Nightmare Realm, and whatever ritual they performed with this cord ripped Mensis and its students into a nightmare. That's why you find the lecture hall in the Nightmare, and that's why there's hundreds of dead students throughout Yahar'gul, all wearing the cage that appears to have delivered them to their harrowing nightmare. Mikolash's corpse provides a gateway into the nightmare, and we find him here, clearly insane, wandering the halls.
I see. So the whole cage thing was kind of like a conduit in order to communicate with this old one? Wait, I said old one. Great One. The old ones are a Warhammer thing. And because we delve into the dreamscapes here, I wonder if anything that happens here affects reality. I'm gonna guess so, because, I mean, there is the other heavy theme of reality and not being able to see the truth.
Mikolash believes that it's possible to ascend towards becoming a Great One, citing Rom as his example. Rom, however, is not fully developed, rather she has the blood of their kin. And let's just go back to Rom for a second. When you defeat Rom, Queen Yharnam appears. She's a Temerian woman who has clearly suffered a childbirth gone horribly wrong.
Well, umbilical cords, eh? Was she... Oh god, this seems horrific to think about. Was she trying to give birth to a Great One?
She is linked to the Nightmare of Mensis, to the ritual that Rom was hiding, and she appears in this nightmare, looking up towards Murgo's loft.
Wait, she appears to have given birth to Murgo, the infant Great One. There you go. What in the world were they doing here?
Where Murgo and his wet nurse reside. Queen Yharnam hails from the Temerian civilization that was in power long ago, and she was blessed with a child of the Great Ones. From the way she appears outside Murgo's loft, it is clear that her consciousness, her spirit, was pulled into this nightmare as well.
I see. I also wouldn't say blessed. Blessed implies a good thing happened. I'm not sure this is good. Well, I suppose good and bad is a matter of perspective as well. Probably a good thing for the Great Ones.
Even when you encounter Queen Yharnam's real self in the Temerian tombs, the baby Murgo screams whenever you hit her, and even when you kill Yharnam in the tombs, it is clear that she is not actually dead. But her horrific consciousness is only asleep, and it stirs in unsettling motions. Her consciousness seems to be showing up here in the nightmare, completely separate from her physical form. The same thing is happening with you, with Mikolash, with the Great Ones in the nightmare with you. You all exist in this nightmare that Mensis created. So your next question is, which Great One impregnated Yharnam with Murgo all those years ago? I believe it is formless Erden. The Great One Erden, lacking form, exists only in voice. To cite the...
Oh, that is a gnarly design. We only see it because of the feathers and the fur and the cloth just draped over it. It's always such a difficult thing to tackle when you're trying to do all this cosmic horror stuff. And a lot of it lies within the realm of imagination. Like, the horror of so many eldritch horrors is because you can't understand their form. So, like, how do you even represent that in a video game? So far, all the designs I've seen and that I know of outside of this video have been pretty cool, not gonna lie. But for those of you that have played, what do you think of the boss designs in comparison to maybe other Souls games that you have played before? Just based off the visuals, you can tell that this game has a very different art direction, and it really lies heavily into that, which I very much appreciate. Because even as somebody who hasn't played, whenever I see a frame from this game, I can pretty much tell that it's Bloodborne.
The fastest evidence to present. There's nothing in the cradle after you defeat Mogo, and Mogo himself, the child, has no form. Also, his cries are heard throughout your adventure. He exists everywhere. Additionally, Mogo's wet nurse has no form under those robes. And also, the women that are impregnated when this blood moon descends are all related to Erden. But we'll get to that in another video.
Okay.
When you defeat Mogo's wet nurse, you get a message unlike any other that you've received thus far. Instead of prey slaughtered, you get nightmare slain. You defeated a true Great One that's elevated its consciousness to the nightmare realm, and the game is nearing its end. However, all of this should make you think. The Nightmare of Mensis isn't the only dream world I've set foot in, is it? This entire time, I've actually been journeying out from the hunter's dream, guided by lanterns that led me to Mogo and her wet nurse, all of which is made possible by German and his doll. Travel to the hunter's workshop in the waking world and seek the truth. Every Great One loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. The third umbilical cord precipitated the encounter with the pale moon, which beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream.
Yeah, the hunter's dream.
Next to the cord is the
That I have heard of. So, is there ever an answer for what is currently actually happening? Or is this all just a part of the hunter's dream? Are there several layers to this dream? When you enter another dream from inside of a dream, is that a separate dream or the same dream? Or maybe I'm thinking too much into this. Granted, that's kind of what the game is going for, to make you question reality.
An animated doll. Take a hairpin from this real doll and then pass it along to the doll in the dream. When you give her the hairpin, she sheds a single tear, which reads, "Created from the shining silver doll tear, this blood gem is a quiet yet unfaltering friend that continually restores HP, the life essence of a hunter. Perhaps this doll's creator had wished for such a friend, albeit in vain." It's clear that German called upon the Great Ones using an umbilical cord, similar to the manner in which Mikolash did. The Great Ones that inhabit the nightmare are sympathetic in spirit and often answer when called upon. German, lonely and lacking purpose after the church had no more need for his workshop, must have called upon the Great Ones. A Great One responded, the pale moon presence, and imprisoned German within the dream. For while German sleeps, he utters this rare piece of dialogue that clearly shows he does not want to be here.
Oh, Lawrence, Master Willem, somebody help me, unshackle me, please, anybody.
Well, I think he's made a deal that he doesn't want to be a part of anymore. But I understand the need for anime waifu. Actually, if I recall correctly, isn't the doll also kind of a replica of one of the other hunters? Was it Lady Maria? Was her name? I think she's also a DLC boss. In fact, I think she's the cover of the DLC for the game. So what was going on there? Was there some sort of interest? Or was that just like a close companion that you wanted to have with you?
I've had enough of this dream. The night blocks all sight.
That's what the night usually does.
Please.
So for what purpose was the dream?
Also, voice acting top-notch as always. I will always remember the lines uttered and like the emotions that I felt. I don't even remember her name. Was it Lady Teresa or something like that? Saint Teresa? In Elden Ring, it's like Mikola's alter ego. And like I heard a few lines from her just telling us to stop Mikola. And oh boy, man, those few lines brought me to tears. I don't even know her. I haven't even played the game yet. And yet I still remember that. The voice acting in these Souls games are just so powerful. They're so well done. I don't know who does the directing, the voice direction, but they do an incredible job, making sure that the actors convey every single little bit of nuance in the emotions, and you can just really feel what the characters are feeling. Not sure how it is in other languages or in like the original Japanese language, but in English, most certainly so.
Conceived. Well, the doll tells us that countless hunters have passed through here, and all of the graves tell us that as well. And Eileen
Yeesh.
and Jura both have dialogue that is testament to that fact. They talk about how they've been through this dream before as well. So why are hunters being sent through this dream, unable to pass away, just forced to go out into the world and kill beasts? It becomes clearer when you kill Murgo's wet nurse. You return to the hunter's workshop burning down, the dream's purpose fulfilled. Ergo, the purpose of your dream and your hunt appears to have been to slay a great one. 3 endings are presented to you. The first. Gurman offers you a way out of the dream. He asks you to accept your death, for if you do, then you'll awaken in the waking world of Yharnam, and your consciousness will be no longer linked to the dream. The trophy for this ending reads, "You lived through the hunt and saw another day." The
Wake
second
up.
option is to reject Gurman. He suggests that to do so must be a decision caused by madness, and he pits his will against yours to forcibly remove you from the dream. All the while, he entreats you to accept your death and be freed from this dream. If you overpower Gurman, we meet with the Moon Presence, the being that appears to have conceived this nightmare. Just like the nightmare Murgo conceived, it embraces you, and in the cutscene to follow, we see ourselves performing the same role that Gurman did, hosting the dream, likely a slave to the Moon Presence, or perhaps its surrogate child, guiding hunters
Not
throughout
good.
this dream in an effort to slay other great ones. The trophy for this ending reads, "Captivated by..."
Why does the Moon Presence want to slay other great ones? Is that just its purpose? Its desire? I don't really understand what these great ones are thinking about, but I think that's supposed to be the way that it is, or else, you know, I'd probably go insane.
By the Moon Presence, you pledge to watch over the hunter's dream.
I wouldn't really say
There's one key
captivated,
thing you
more
need
like
to remember.
eaten.
The Great Ones are a race, but they're a race unlike
Oh, that's
any
how you
other.
spell Gurman.
Each Great One is entirely unique, and they do not necessarily work together. In fact, from the existence of the dream, I'm almost inclined to believe that the Moon Presence is hostile towards other Great Ones. In the third and final ending, you consume 3 umbilical cords and resist the will of the Moon Presence.
Oh.
You overpower it, and in the cutscene to follow, the doll coddles the being you have become.
What?
You have ascended, truly, as few have before you. The trophy description states, "You became an infant Great One, lifting humanity into its next."
Oh, so you're saying that this is humanity's evolution? That we were the ones who achieved that? By becoming this little noodle worm thing? No, I'm not really feeling this form, but I guess, you know, if we had to become a worm in order to get a hug from our anime doll waifu, maybe worth? Probably not. So then is, like, the happy ending, quote unquote, because there are no happy endings, is the better one to wake up from the dream? Or is it to become this noodle thing?
So after the end of all this, you probably still have questions. What is pale blood? Why does the Moon Presence guide hunters towards killing beasts and great ones? Which ending is the good ending? For all this and more, you need to be subscribed to the channel. I'll have another video out soon analysing the endings, and from here on out, the channel should split into 3 main parts. There's going to be the lore hunting series, where we focus on one aspect of the lore and really figure it out. There's going to be Prepare to Cry, which is my favourite series. It's a series where I tell the story of a character within Bloodborne's universe, and there's going to be Things You Missed, which are short, enjoyable episodes that showcase an area of the game and tell you everything that you missed within it. The criteria for these episodes is generally, if I find something I think I missed, or something I did miss, then I include it in that episode. So those are the 3 main...
Well, us in the future already know how Vaati's channel has evolved. Let's pretty much stick it to this formula.
Series we're going to have. There's also going to be other videos, of course, but those are the 3 main series. I'm still thinking of doing a video on Scholar of the First Sin. Still haven't played that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Was Scholar of the First Sin the DLC? There's probably still a ton of lore that wasn't really covered here, but this general overview of the Bloodborne series kind of makes me want to play, not gonna lie. As a big fan of cosmic horror, it does seem incredibly up my alley. And as I said previously in the video, with how highly so many people regard this game, I feel like it's just a guaranteed good time. As long as you enjoy Souls games, of course. But yeah, I also want to get into the other Souls games, namely like Sekiro and the Dark Souls series, maybe even Demon Souls. If you guys have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll check them out. Also, note, don't leave them as links. YouTube does not like it when anybody posts a link in the comments. Part of it's like anti-scam policy or whatever. But that's going to be it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed and I'll catch you in the next one.